24-year-old Ashley Johnson thought the hardest part of her deployment to Germany would be missing her grandmother's famous Sunday dinners or worrying about her aging golden retriever, Max. She never imagined that while she was serving her country as a communications specialist with the 82nd Airborne Division, her own family would betray her in the most devastating way possible. What started as a routine video call home would uncover a web of greed, deception, and family secrets that would shake Ashley to her core and lead to a legal battle that would change everything she thought she knew about the people she trusted most. But this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how one young woman's determination to seek justice would expose a sophisticated theft ring, reunite a family heirloom with its rightful owner, and prove that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the most painful circumstances.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ashley Johnson had always been the responsible one in her family. Even as a child, growing up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, she was the one who remembered to feed the neighbors' cats when they went on vacation, who saved her allowance for months to buy her little sister Emma a birthday present, and who never missed a single one of her great-grandmother's piano lessons. That beautiful 1920 Steinway baby grand piano wasn't just an instrument. It was the heart of the Johnson family home, where 4 generations of women had learned to play everything from classical sonatas to modern pop songs. When Great-Grandma Rose passed away 3 years ago at the age of 92, she left the piano specifically to Ashley in her will. "That girl has music in her soul," Rose had told the family lawyer, Mr. Peterson, just weeks before her death. "She's the only one who truly understands what this piano means." The inheritance had caused some tension at the time. Ashley's older brother Marcus and his wife Victoria had been expecting a more traditional division of assets, but Rose's wishes were clear and legally binding. Ashley had just finished her second year of college at the University of Northern Iowa when she made the difficult decision to enlist in the Army. The decision wasn't financial. Her great-grandmother had also left her enough money for tuition, but rather a deep sense of duty that had been instilled in her by her grandfather, a Korean War veteran. She wanted to serve her country, see the world, and gain life experience before settling into a career. Before shipping out to Fort Bragg for training, Ashley had carefully arranged for the piano to be moved to a climate-controlled storage facility in Cedar Falls. She paid 2 years' rent in advance and gave her parents, Robert and Linda Johnson, the only spare key for emergencies. The piano was insured for its appraised value of $45,000. It was a rare model in exceptional condition, with original ivory keys and intricate mother-of-pearl inlays that made it not just valuable, but irreplaceable. "Don't worry, sweetheart," her father had said, helping her load the last of her belongings into her car. "That piano will be waiting for you when you get back. We'll check on it every month, make sure everything's okay." Her mother had hugged her tightly at the airport. "We're so proud of you, Ash. Rose would be proud too. You're going to do amazing things." The first year of Ashley's service had gone smoothly. After completing advanced individual training in communications, she'd been stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where she worked as part of a team maintaining critical communication networks for NATO operations. The work was challenging and meaningful, and Ashley found herself thriving in the structured military environment. She video-called home every Sunday, chatting with her parents, her sister Emma, who was now a senior in high school, and, occasionally, her brother Marcus. Marcus Johnson was 32, 8 years older than Ashley, and had always been something of a black sheep in the family. While Ashley excelled in school and Emma was a star athlete, Marcus had struggled with direction after high school. He'd bounced between community college and various jobs, construction work, retail, a brief stint trying to start a lawn care business, never quite finding his footing. 2 years ago, he'd married Victoria Chen, a sharp-tongued woman from nearby Waterloo, who worked as a real estate agent and seemed to constantly push Marcus toward get-rich-quick schemes. Ashley had tried to like Victoria. She really had. But there was something about her sister-in-law that had always made her uncomfortable. Victoria had a way of making cutting remarks disguised as jokes, and she'd always seemed resentful of Ashley's accomplishments. During family gatherings, Victoria would make comments about how some people get all the luck, or how nice it must be to have everything handed to you. Ashley had chalked it up to jealousy and tried to rise above it, but the tension was always there, simmering just beneath the surface. The first sign that something was wrong came on a cold February Sunday morning in Germany. Ashley was in her barracks room preparing for her usual video call home when her phone rang 20 minutes early. It was her sister Emma, and she was crying. "Ash, you need to call Mom and Dad right now. Something terrible has happened, and they don't know how to tell you." Ashley's heart immediately jumped to the worst-case scenarios. Someone was sick, there'd been an accident, Max had died. "Em, what's going on? You're scaring me." "It's the piano, Ash. It's gone." The words didn't make sense at first. "What do you mean, gone? Did something happen to the storage unit?" "No, Ash, Marcus and Victoria, they sold it while you were deployed. Mom and Dad just found out yesterday." The room seemed to spin around Ashley as Emma's words sunk in. "That's impossible. They don't have access to the storage unit. Only Mom and Dad have the key." "Victoria convinced them it was an emergency," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "She said you'd called and asked them to sell it to help with some kind of debt you'd gotten into. She had all this story about your unit and your deployment." Ashley felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "Emma, I never called anyone. I don't have any debts. The Army pays for everything here." "I know, Ash, we all know that now, but Victoria, she's good at manipulating people. She made it sound like you were in real trouble and too proud to ask for help directly. She said Marcus had spoken to you privately and that you'd specifically asked them to handle it quietly."
The betrayal was overwhelming. Ashley had to sit down on her bunk as the full implications hit her. How long ago? 3 weeks. They sold it to some collector in Chicago for $35,000. Victoria handled all the paperwork and said she was sending the money directly to you. Mom and Dad didn't know you never received it until yesterday, when they called to check on you and mentioned hoping the money had helped with your situation. Ashley's mind was racing. Her great-grandmother's piano, the instrument that had been in their family for nearly a century, that held countless memories and represented Rose's faith in her, was gone. Sold by the very people who should have been protecting it, and for $10,000 less than its appraised value, no doubt pocketed by Marcus and Victoria. "Where are Mom and Dad now?" Ashley managed to ask. "They're at the police station, but the officers are saying it might not be theft, since Marcus is family, and he convinced them it was what you wanted. They're talking about it being a civil matter. Dad is beside himself. He keeps saying he should have called you directly to confirm, but Victoria made it sound so urgent and believable." Ashley's mind was racing. Her great-grandmother's piano, the instrument that had been in their family for nearly a century, that held countless memories and represented Rose's faith in her, was gone. Sold by the very people who should have been protecting it, and for $10,000 less than its appraised value, no doubt pocketed by Marcus and Victoria. "Where are Mom and Dad now?" Ashley managed to ask. "They're at the police station, but the officers are saying it might not be theft since Marcus is family, and he convinced them it was what you wanted. They're talking about it being a civil matter." Dad is beside himself. He keeps saying he should have called you directly to confirm, but Victoria made it sound so urgent and believable. Ashley felt a surge of rage unlike anything she'd ever experienced. This wasn't just theft. It was a calculated betrayal that had exploited her parents' love and trust. Victoria had used Ashley's deployment, her absence, and inability to immediately respond as a weapon against her own family. "Emma, I need you to tell Mom and Dad to do nothing else until I can get some help. I'm going to figure out how to handle this." After hanging up, Ashley sat in her small room, staring at the wall where she'd hung a photo of herself as a child sitting at Rose's piano bench, her small fingers stretched across the keys, while her great-grandmother smiled beside her. The photo had been a source of comfort during difficult days in Germany, a reminder of home and the music that would be waiting for her return. Now, it was just a painful reminder of what had been stolen from her.
Ashley's first instinct was to call Marcus directly and demand answers, but her military training kicked in. She needed to approach this strategically, gather information, and understand her options. Random emotional outbursts wouldn't get her piano back. She spent the next several hours researching military legal assistance programs and discovered that soldiers dealing with legal issues back home could receive help through the Staff Judge Advocate's office. Monday morning, she made an appointment with Captain Sarah Martinez, a military lawyer who specialized in helping service members with civilian legal matters. Captain Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her mid-30s who listened carefully as Ashley explained the situation. "This is more common than you think," she said grimly. "Unfortunately, deployment periods create opportunities for family members to take advantage. The good news is that you have several options, and the fact that this was done without your knowledge or consent makes it a clear case of theft, regardless of family relationships." "What's the first step?" Ashley asked. "We're going to file a report with the military police here, which will create an official record of the theft. Then I'm going to contact my counterpart at the Legal Assistance Office at Fort Dodge in Iowa. They work with civilian authorities on cases like this. We're also going to need to track down exactly where this piano ended up and who has it now." Captain Martinez leaned forward, her expression serious but assuring. "Sergeant Johnson, I want you to understand something. Your brother and his wife didn't just steal an object from you. They stole a piece of your family's history, and they did it by manipulating your parents and exploiting your service to your country. This isn't going to be easy, but we're going to get your piano back." As Ashley left the legal office that afternoon, she felt something she hadn't experienced since Emma's devastating phone call: hope. For the first time in days, she had a plan and people in her corner who understood the gravity of what had happened. She didn't yet know that Marcus and Victoria's scheme was far more elaborate than anyone suspected, or that getting the piano back would require unraveling a web of lies that stretched across state lines. She had no idea that Victoria had been planning this theft for months, carefully studying Ashley's deployment schedule and researching the piano's value. Most importantly, Ashley didn't know that the person who had bought her great-grandmother's piano was about to become an unexpected ally in her fight for justice, and that this betrayal would ultimately lead to discoveries that would change her family forever. But she was about to find out. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The Military Legal Assistance Office at Ramstein became Ashley's second home over the next week. Captain Martinez had assigned a paralegal, Specialist David Thompson, to help Ashley navigate the complex web of interstate commerce laws, theft statutes, and military family assistance protocols. What they discovered in their initial investigation was far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. "Sergeant Johnson," Captain Martinez said, spreading a collection of documents across her desk, "we've made some interesting discoveries about your sister-in-law's activities. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Victoria Chen has been planning this for months." Ashley leaned forward, studying the papers. Phone records, bank statements, and what appeared to be printed emails filled her vision. "What do you mean?" Specialist Thompson pulled out a highlighted timeline. "We contacted your parents' phone company and requested records. Victoria made 17 calls to piano dealers and auction houses across the Midwest between November and January. She also spent considerable time researching the specific model of your piano online." The revelation hit Ashley like a physical blow. She was researching it while I was calling home for Christmas? While I was talking to my family about how much I missed playing it? "It gets worse," Captain Martinez continued grimly. "We reached out to the storage facility in Cedar Falls. Their security cameras show Victoria visiting your unit 3 separate times in January, always with a different man. She was showing it to potential buyers before she even convinced your parents to release it." Ashley felt sick. The level of premeditation was staggering. How did she get into the storage unit? Your father gave her the key temporarily in December when she told him she wanted to check on things while your parents were visiting your aunt in Florida for Christmas. She had copies made at 3 different locksmiths in town. We found the receipts in her credit card records that the Iowa Legal Assistance Office obtained through proper channels. The betrayal kept deepening. Ashley had called home during that Christmas visit to Florida, speaking with her parents who were so happy to be spending time with family. Meanwhile, Victoria was systematically planning to steal the most precious thing Ashley owned. Specialist Thompson opened another file. We also discovered that Victoria has done this before. 2 years ago, she was involved in a dispute with her ex-boyfriend's family over the sale of his grandmother's jewelry collection while he was deployed to Afghanistan. The case was settled out of court, but the pattern is clear. Ashley stared at the documents, trying to process the magnitude of what she was learning. So she specifically targets military families? It appears so. She knows deployment schedules create opportunities, and she understands that service members have limited ability to respond quickly to family emergencies back home. Captain Martinez leaned back in her chair. Ashley, what we're dealing with here isn't just theft. It's a sophisticated fraud operation that preys on military families. Victoria has been studying your family dynamics, your deployment schedule, and your financial situation for over a year. The conversation was interrupted by Captain Martinez's phone ringing. She answered quickly, spoke in hushed tones for many minutes, then hung up with a grim expression. That was Major Williams at Fort Dodge. They've been working with the Chicago Police Department to track down your piano. The good news is they found it. The concerning news is where they found it. Ashley's heart raced. Where? It's not with the collector Victoria claimed to sell it to. It's in a warehouse on the south side of Chicago, along with approximately 60 other high-end instruments and antiques. The FBI has been watching this location for 3 months as part of an investigation into stolen goods operation. The room feels silent as the implication sank in. Ashley's piano wasn't just stolen, it had been sold into an organized crime network. So the collector Victoria mentioned was actually a fence for stolen goods? Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The warehouse is owned by a company called Heritage Acquisitions, which is operated by a man named Vincent Romano. Romano has connections to Victoria through a real estate transaction she handled last year. She sold him a property in Waterloo, and they've maintained contact since then. Ashley felt her world shifting. This wasn't just a family betrayal, it was part of a larger criminal enterprise that her sister-in-law had been involved with for months, possibly years. Specialist Thompson handed her another document. We also found something else in Victoria's email records. She's been corresponding with at least 6 other military spouses whose partners are currently deployed. She's been cultivating relationships, asking about family heirlooms, financial situations, and deployment schedules.
The scope of Victoria's operation was breathtaking. Ashley realized she might not be the only victim. There could be other military families who had been similarly targeted and robbed. Captain, we need to stop her before she does this to anyone else. Already in motion, Captain Martinez replied. The FBI is taking over the investigation now that we've uncovered the interstate trafficking component. Agent Rebecca Stone from the Chicago field office will be your primary contact moving forward. That afternoon, Ashley had her first phone conversation with Agent Stone, a 15-year veteran of the FBI who specialized in organized theft rings. Agent Stone's voice was professional but warm as she explained the next steps. Sergeant Johnson, I've been briefing myself on your case, and I want you to know that you've helped us make a significant breakthrough in an investigation we've been working on for almost a year. Your piano isn't the only military family heirloom that ended up in Romano's warehouse. Ashley felt a chill. How many others? So far, we've identified artifacts from 11 different military families. Wedding rings from Iraq veterans, Civil War memorabilia from Afghanistan deployees, musical instruments, artwork,
all sold by spouses or family members using similar manipulation tactics to what Victoria used on your parents. The revelation was staggering. Ashley had uncovered not just her own family's betrayal, but an entire network that had been systematically targeting military families across the country. Agent Stone, what happens now? We are coordinating with military legal offices at bases across the country to identify other victims. We're also preparing to execute simultaneous search warrants on Romano's warehouse, Victoria's residence, and several other locations connected to this operation. But I need you to do something difficult. Ashley braced herself. What? We need you to call Victoria directly. We want to record the conversation and give her an opportunity to confess or provide information about the network. It might be hard to hear what she says, but it could be crucial evidence for prosecuting not just her, but the entire operation. The thought of speaking to Victoria made Ashley's stomach turn, but she understood the importance. When? Tomorrow morning, your time. We'll have FBI technicians monitoring the call, and Captain Martinez will be with you for support. Just remember, Victoria doesn't know yet that we've discovered the scope of her activities. She probably thinks this is just a family dispute over a piano.
That evening, Ashley sat in her barracks room, staring at her phone and trying to prepare mentally for the most difficult conversation of her life. She would be speaking to someone who had spent months planning to rob her, who had manipulated her parents' love and concern, and who had been targeting other military families with the same cruel scheme. But she also realized something else. Her great-grandmother Rose had always told her that music had the power to bring justice and healing to the world. Every note you play sends something good into the universe, Ashley, Rose used to say. Sometimes that good comes back to you in ways you never expect. Tomorrow, Ashley would find out if Rose was right. The phone call to Victoria would either begin the process of bringing justice to multiple military families, or it would reveal just how deep this betrayal truly went. As she prepared for sleep, Ashley looked at the photo of herself at Rose's piano bench one more time. For the first time since learning about the theft, she felt something other than grief and anger. She felt determination, and she felt the strength of knowing that her fight for justice was about much more than recovering a family heirloom. It was about protecting other military families from experiencing the same betrayal she had endured. And tomorrow, she would take the first step toward making that happen. The recording equipment arrived at Captain Martinez's office at 0800 hours sharp. FBI technician Michael Chang worked efficiently, setting up digital monitoring devices while Agent Stone joined the call from Chicago, and Ashley tried to calm her racing heart. The plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. Ashley would call Victoria, pretend she had just learned about the piano sale, and try to get Victoria to reveal details about the transaction and her network of buyers. Remember, Sergeant Johnson, Agent Stone's voice crackled through the secure line. Victoria thinks she's in control of this situation. She believes your parents were successfully manipulated and that you're just now finding out about the sale. Use that to your advantage. Ashley nodded, though her hands were shaking as she dialed Victoria's number. It was 2:30 a.m. in Iowa, but Agent Stone had determined this would work in their favor. People were more likely to make mistakes and reveal information when caught off guard. The phone rang 4 times before Victoria's groggy voice answered. Hello? Victoria, it's Ashley. I need to know what the hell you did with my piano. There was a long pause, followed by the sound of rustling sheets. Ashley could hear Marcus mumbling something in the background and Victoria shishing him. Ashley, what are you talking about? It's the middle of the night. Don't play dumb with me. Emma told me everything. You convinced my parents to sell Rose's piano while I was deployed. How could you do that to my family? Victoria's voice became instantly defensive, but Ashley caught something else in her tone, a rehearsed quality that suggested she'd prepared for this conversation. Look, Ashley, I know you're upset, but your parents were really worried about you. You called Marcus crying about some debts you'd gotten into, and you were too embarrassed to tell your parents directly. We were just trying to help.
The lie was so smooth and confident that Ashley almost doubted her own memory for a moment. Victoria had clearly practiced this story. I never called Marcus about any debts. I don't have any debts, Victoria. The military covers everything here. Well, that's not what Marcus told me. Maybe you should talk to your brother instead of yelling at me. Victoria's voice was getting sharper now, less controlled. Ashley pressed forward. Who did you sell it to? I want to know exactly where my great-grandmother's piano is right now. Another long pause. In the background, Ashley could hear Marcus's voice more clearly now, though she couldn't make out the words. He sounded agitated. I sold it to a collector in Chicago, okay? Some guy who deals in vintage instruments. He paid good money for it, $35,000. Marcus has the paperwork somewhere. What was the collector's name? I don't remember off the top of my head. It was some Italian name, I think. Romano or something like that. Agent Stone's voice came through Ashley's earpiece. She just confirmed Romano. Keep pushing for more details. Romano? Ashley repeated. Did you meet him personally, or was this done online? Victoria's voice became more guarded. Why does it matter? The sale is done, Ashley. The money went to help with your situation. Maybe you should be grateful instead of, what situation? Describe to me exactly what Marcus told you about my supposed debts. The line went quiet except for increasingly agitated whispering between Victoria and Marcus. Finally, Victoria came back on the phone, her voice now openly hostile. Look, I don't have to explain anything to you. Your brother made a decision to help his sister, and I supported him. If you have a problem with that, take it up with Marcus. Put Marcus on the phone. No, he's sleeping. And frankly, Ashley, you're being really ungrateful. Do you know how hard it was for me to find a buyer for that old thing? I had to drive all over Iowa and Illinois, meeting with dealers and collectors. I spent weeks working on this for you. Agent Stone's voice in Ashley's earpiece was urgent. She just admitted to traveling interstate and meeting multiple buyers. This confirms premeditation and the trafficking element. Ashley seized on Victoria's slip. You said you spent weeks on this? I thought it was an emergency situation because I was in immediate financial trouble. Victoria realized her mistake immediately. Well, it took time to find the right buyer, someone who would pay fair value instead of just some pawn shop that would rip you off. Victoria, how did you even know what the piano was worth? Did you have it appraised? I did some research online. I'm not stupid, Ashley. I know how to look things up. What kind of research? Did you contact multiple dealers? The line went quiet again, and Ashley could hear heated whispering that was getting louder. Finally, Marcus's voice came on the phone, sounding exhausted and stressed.
Ashley, look, maybe we made a mistake. Victoria said you needed help, and Mom and Dad were really worried. Maybe we should have called you directly first, but... Victoria's voice cut him off sharply. Marcus, don't say anything else. Ashley, we're done with this conversation. But Marcus continued talking, his words tumbling out in a rush. The guy Victoria sold it to, he seemed kinda sketchy, Ash. He had this warehouse full of stuff, and there were other people there who looked like, I don't know, not like regular antique collectors. Victoria said it was normal, but... The line went dead. Victoria had hung up. Ashley sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. Captain Martinez and Technician Chang were both making notes, while Agent Stone's voice came through the speaker. That was excellent work, Sergeant Johnson. Victoria confirmed several key elements. She admitted to working with Romano, she acknowledged traveling interstate to meet multiple buyers, and she revealed that this wasn't actually an emergency situation. Most importantly, Marcus indicated that Romano's warehouse operation seemed suspicious. Ashley felt emotionally drained, but also strangely empowered. For the first time since learning about the theft, she felt like she was taking concrete action to get her piano back. Agent Stone, what happens now? Now we move quickly. Victoria knows you're suspicious, and she's probably going to contact Romano to warn him. We're accelerating our timeline. The search warrants will be executed tomorrow morning. Captain Martinez leaned forward. Ashley, there's something else we need to discuss.
The FBI has asked if you'd be willing to testify in federal court when this case goes to trial. It would mean extending your stay in Germany, potentially, or possibly returning to the United States for court appearances. Ashley didn't hesitate. Whatever it takes to make sure Victoria and her associates can't do this to other military families. Agent Stone's voice carried a note of respect. I've worked with a lot of crime victims over the years, Sergeant Johnson, but your commitment to justice for other families, not just your own situation, is remarkable. Over the next several hours, Ashley learned more details about the FBI's investigation. Romano's operation had been identified after a routine investigation into stolen artwork led agents to the Chicago warehouse. What they found was a sophisticated network that specifically targeted valuable items from military families during deployment periods. The beauty of the scheme from their perspective is that deployment schedules are public information if you know where to look. They can identify when service members will be unable to respond quickly to family emergencies, and they use family members like Victoria to create plausible stories about financial crises. Ashley discovered that Victoria had been recruited into the network 18 months earlier through her real estate work. Romano had purchased properties from her, and during those transactions, she'd mentioned her brother-in-law's military service and the valuable piano inheritance he'd received. Romano then cultivated the relationship, eventually proposing the theft scheme and offering Victoria a significant commission for her role. How much did she actually receive for my piano? Based on financial records we've obtained, Victoria received $8,000 for the piano, plus a $2,000 bonus for recruiting Marcus as an unwitting accomplice. The piano was then sold to Romano for $15,000, though its actual value to him was much higher as part of a bulk shipment to overseas buyers. The numbers made me sick. My great-grandmother's irreplaceable piano, worth at least $45,000 and priceless in sentimental value, had been traded away for $10,000, split between Victoria and criminals. But Ashley also realized something important. Her decision to fight back had exposed a criminal network that had been operating for years. Other military families would be spared the heartbreak she had experienced, and stolen heirlooms from 11 different families would potentially be recovered. That evening, Ashley video called her parents for the first time since learning about the theft. Her father looked haggard and ashamed, while her mother had clearly been crying. "Ashley, honey, we're so sorry," her mother began immediately. "We should have called you directly to confirm, but Victoria was so convincing, and she had so many details about your unit and your deployment." "Mom, it's not your fault. Victoria is a professional con artist who specifically targets military families. You were manipulated by someone who had been planning this for months." Her father's voice was thick with emotion. "That piano was Rose's legacy to you, Ashley. I feel like I failed both you and her memory." "Dad, Rose's legacy to me wasn't just the piano. It was the strength to stand up for what's right and the courage to protect other people from being hurt. That's exactly what we're doing now." Ashley explained the FBI investigation and her role in exposing the criminal network. By the end of the call, her parents had transformed from devastated guilt to fierce pride in their daughter's determination to seek justice. "Your great-grandmother would be so proud of you, Ashley. You're fighting not just for yourself, but for other families who might be targeted." As Ashley prepared for another sleepless night, she realized that the most difficult part of her journey was just beginning. Tomorrow, the FBI would execute search warrants that could either recover her piano or reveal that it had already been sold overseas. Victoria would likely be arrested, creating family turmoil that would last for years. But Ashley had made her commitment. She would see this through to the end, no matter what personal cost, because her fight had become much more than recovering a family heirloom. At 6:47 a.m. Central Time, Agent Rebecca Stone stood outside a nondescript warehouse on Chicago's South Side, coordinating the largest military family theft bust in FBI history. 23 federal agents, 12 Chicago police officers, and 3 K-9 units had surrounded the Heritage Acquisitions building while simultaneous raids were being conducted in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri. For Ashley, watching from Captain Martinez's office via secure video feed from Agent Stone's body camera, it felt surreal to see her personal tragedy transformed into a major federal operation. "Breach! Breach! Breach!" came the tactical commander's voice through the radio as the warehouse doors were forced open. What the agents discovered inside defied even Agent Stone's experienced expectations. The warehouse wasn't just storing stolen military family heirlooms, it was operating as a sophisticated international trafficking hub with connections to auction houses in London, private collectors in Dubai, and black market dealers across Eastern Europe. "Jesus Christ," Agent Stone whispered as her camera panned across rows of tagged and cataloged items. "This is bigger than we thought." Ashley watched in horror as the camera revealed the scope of the operation. Hundreds of items were organized by type and value. Musical instruments in one section, military memorabilia in another, jewelry and precious metals in secured cases, and artwork wrapped in protective materials. Each item had a detailed provenance card attached, listing the military family it had been stolen from, the method of acquisition, and its destination market. "There's your piano, Sergeant Johnson," Agent Stone said softly, as her camera focused on a corner of the warehouse where Ashley's great-grandmother's 1920s Steinway sat alongside other stolen instruments. The piano looked smaller and more vulnerable than Ashley remembered, surrounded by unfamiliar cellos, violins, and antique harpsichords. Ashley felt tears streaming down her face as she saw Rose's piano for the first time in over a year. Even on the grainy video feed, she could see the distinctive mother-of-pearl inlays that Rose had always pointed out during their lessons. It was really there, really intact, and really about to come home. But Agent Stone's camera kept moving, revealing increasingly disturbing discoveries. In Romano's office, agents found detailed psychological profiles on over 40 military spouses and family members, complete with financial information, deployment schedules, and assessments of their vulnerability to manipulation schemes. "Ashley, we found Victoria's file," Agent Stone said, her voice grim. "Romano has been tracking your family for over 2 years, not 18 months like we originally thought. He has photographs of your piano from when it was still in your great-grandmother's house, financial records showing when you inherited it, and detailed notes about your parents' personalities and weaknesses." The violation felt overwhelming. Ashley realized that her family's most private moments, their grief over Rose's death, their pride in Ashley's military service, their worry about her deployment, had all been cataloged and weaponized by strangers planning to rob them. Captain Martinez put a supportive hand on Ashley's shoulder as Agent Stone's investigation continued. In a secured filing cabinet, agents discovered contracts with international buyers who specialize in unverifiable provenance items, stolen goods that could be sold overseas without triggering U.S. law enforcement alerts. "Sergeant Johnson, your piano is scheduled to be shipped to a private collector in Switzerland next week," Agent Stone reported. "If we hadn't moved when we did, you would never have seen it again." The timing sent chills through Ashley. Her phone call to Victoria had literally saved her piano from disappearing forever into the international black market. Meanwhile, the simultaneous raid on Victoria and Marcus's house in Iowa was revealing the personal side of the conspiracy. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, leading the Iowa team, found Victoria's home office filled with research materials on military families. Filing cabinets contained detailed dossiers on families from Fort Leonard Wood, Fort Riley, Fort Campbell, and a dozen other military installations. Victoria Chen wasn't just Agent Romano's accomplice. She was his primary intelligence gatherer for the entire Midwestern region, Agent Walsh reported via radio. "She's been using her real estate connections to identify military families with valuable inheritances, then cultivating relationships with their spouses and relatives." Ashley learned that Victoria had joined multiple military spouse support groups on social media, not to provide emotional support, but to gather intelligence on deployment schedules and family assets. She had befriended lonely wives and worried mothers, earning their trust over months or years before identifying opportunities for theft. The personal betrayal cut deeper than Ashley had imagined possible. Victoria hadn't just stolen from her family, she had systematically infiltrated military communities to exploit the very people who sacrificed the most for their country. As the raids continued, Agent Stone discovered Romano's shipping records, which revealed the true scope of the operation.
Over the past 3 years, Heritage Acquisitions had trafficked military family heirlooms worth over $2.3 million to international buyers. The items included Civil War artifacts inherited by Iraq veterans, family jewelry passed down through generations of service members, rare books and documents from military historians, and musical instruments like Ashley's piano.
Each stolen item represents not just monetary loss, but the destruction of family legacies, Agent Stone explained to Ashley via video link. These criminals didn't just steal objects, they stole pieces of military family history that can never be replaced. The investigation also revealed Romano's recruitment methods. He specifically targeted real estate agents, antique appraisers, and estate sale organizers who had access to information about valuable family possessions. Victoria was one of at least 8 recruited accomplices across different states, each responsible for identifying and facilitating thefts in their region. During the search of Victoria's computer, digital forensic specialists discovered encrypted communications with other accomplices discussing potential targets. Ashley's family had been designated as Priority Alpha due to the piano's high value and Ashley's extended deployment schedule. Victoria had even received a bonus for successfully recruiting Marcus as an unwitting accomplice, as having a family member involved provided additional legitimacy to the theft. Quote, Victoria received a performance evaluation from Romano 6 months ago. She was praised for her excellent manipulation of family dynamics and her innovative use of deployment anxiety to create urgency. End quote. Agent Stone reported to Ashley. They were treating the destruction of military families like a business optimization problem. The clinical nature of the operation made Ashley feel physically sick. Her family's love, worry, and trust had been turned into vulnerabilities to be exploited by people who saw military service as an opportunity for profit. Back in Iowa, Victoria's arrest was creating chaos in the Johnson family. Ashley's parents, who were present during the search warrant execution, watched in shock as FBI agents documented Victoria's extensive research files on their family. Marcus, who had been genuinely unaware of Victoria's criminal activities, was devastated to learn that his wife had been using him to access Ashley's inheritance. Quote, Marcus is cooperating fully with the investigation, end quote. Agent Walsh reported. He's provided detailed information about Victoria's activities and Romano's warehouse visit. He genuinely believed he was helping his sister with financial problems. Ashley felt a complex mix of emotions about her brother. While his naivete and willingness to bypass direct communication with her had enabled the theft, it was clear that he had been manipulated as completely as their parents. Victoria had spent 2 years studying Marcus's personality and family relationships, identifying exactly how to exploit his desire to help without encouraging him to ask too many questions. As the day progressed, the full network began to emerge. Romano's operation connected to similar theft rings in Texas, California, and North Carolina. The FBI was coordinating with military criminal investigative services across all branches to identify additional victims and recover stolen items. Sergeant Johnson, your decision to fight back has exposed a national network that's been targeting military families for at least 5 years, Agent Stone told Ashley as the warehouse search continued. We're estimating that hundreds of families have been victimized by this organization. By late afternoon, Ashley learned that Romano himself had been arrested trying to flee to Canada with a suitcase containing $400,000 in cash and detailed records of international buyer contacts. His arrest revealed connections to organized crime families in Chicago and New York, who specialized in high-end stolen goods trafficking. The investigation was expanding beyond anything Ashley had imagined when she made that first call to military legal assistance. What started as a heartbroken soldier trying to recover her great-grandmother's piano had become a federal investigation into organized crime that specifically targeted America's military families. As Ashley prepared for another sleepless night in Germany, she realized that while her piano had been found and the criminals were in custody, her journey was far from over. The legal proceedings would take months or potentially years, and her testimony would be crucial to ensuring that Romano, Victoria, and their accomplices faced appropriate consequences. But for the first time since Emma's devastating phone call, Ashley felt something approaching peace. Her great-grandmother's piano would come home, Other military families would have their stolen heirlooms returned, and the network that had turned military service into vulnerability would be dismantled. Rose had always told her that fighting for what's right sometimes required sacrifice and courage. Ashley was beginning to understand that her great-grandmother had been preparing her for this moment all along.
3 weeks after the raids, Ashley's world collapsed in a way she never anticipated. She was in the middle of her morning communications briefing at Ramstein when Captain Martinez burst into the secure facility with an expression that made Ashley's blood run cold. "Sergeant Johnson, we need to talk immediately. There's been a major development in your case." Ashley followed Captain Martinez to a secure conference room where Agent Stone was waiting on a video call, her face grim and exhausted. Behind her, Ashley could see the chaos of what appeared to be a legal office, with lawyers frantically reviewing documents. "Ashley, I'm going to give this to you straight," Agent Stone began without preamble. "Romano's defense team has filed a motion that could destroy our entire case, and they're using your military status against us." Ashley felt the familiar knot of dread forming in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "Romano's lawyer is arguing that because you're active military, you had no legal standing to authorize the original FBI investigation. They're claiming that all evidence obtained through your cooperation was gathered illegally because service members can't initiate civilian criminal investigations without proper military chain of command approval." The room seemed to spin around Ashley. But Captain Martinez approved everything through military legal assistance. Agent Stone's expression darkened further. "That's where it gets worse. Romano's legal team has discovered that Captain Martinez failed to file proper paperwork with the Staff Judge Advocate General's office before authorizing your cooperation with our investigation. Technically, she exceeded her authority when she allowed you to participate in that recorded phone call." Captain Martinez looked stricken. "Ashley, I thought I was following proper protocol, but I was so focused on helping you get justice that I skipped some bureaucratic steps. I never imagined it would come back to hurt the case." "What does this mean for the investigation?" Ashley asked, though she was terrified of the answer. "It means that Romano's defense team is arguing that your recorded phone call with Victoria should be thrown out as evidence. Without that call, we lose Victoria's admissions about working with Romano, her confirmation of the interstate trafficking, and Marcus's statements about the suspicious warehouse. Essentially, we lose the foundation of our entire case." Ashley felt like she was drowning. The phone call that had felt like such a victory, that had exposed the criminal network and led to the recovery of her piano, was now being used to destroy the very case it had helped build. But Agent Stone wasn't finished delivering bad news. "There's more. Romano's lawyer has also discovered that I failed to properly read your rights as a witness before involving you in the phone call operation. Since you were acting as an agent of law enforcement during that call, his defense team is arguing that your rights were violated under the Fourth Amendment." "I don't understand," Ashley said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to make that call. I volunteered to help catch the people who stole from military families." "Intent doesn't matter in federal court," Agent Stone replied grimly. "What matters is whether proper legal procedures were followed, and Romano has hired one of the most expensive defense attorneys in Chicago, someone who specializes in getting evidence thrown out on technicalities." Captain Martinez slammed her hand on the table in frustration. "This is insane. We're talking about a criminal who specifically targets military families, and his defense strategy is to use military regulations against the very people he victimized." Agent Stone continued. "Romano's lawyer has also filed a motion arguing that the search warrants for the warehouse were based on illegally obtained evidence from your phone call. If the judge agrees, everything we found in that warehouse could be ruled inadmissible in court." The implications hit Ashley like a physical blow. "Including my piano?" "Including your piano!" if the evidence is thrown out, we'd have to return all the seized items to Romano until we can build a new case with legally obtained evidence. That could take years, and there's no guarantee we'd be successful. Ashley stared at the wall, trying to process what she was hearing. The criminal network that had systematically targeted military families might walk free because the very military system designed to protect service members had inadvertently sabotaged the investigation. Agent Stone's voice became even more serious. Ashley, there's something else you need to know. Victoria's lawyer has been in contact with Romano's defense team, and they're coordinating their strategies. Victoria is now claiming that she was coerced into participating in Romano's operation because she feared for her safety. That's ridiculous, Ashley said. The FBI found evidence that she was being paid for her work and was actively recruiting other accomplices. Evidence that might not be admissible if Romano's motion is successful, Agent Stone replied. Victoria's news story is that she was an unwilling victim who was threatened into compliance. She's claiming that her research on military families was actually her trying to find a way to warn potential victims. Ashley felt physically sick. The woman who had spent months planning to steal her great-grandmother's piano was now positioning herself as a victim of the same criminal organization she had helped operate.
Captain Martinez looked defeated. How did we get from exposing a major criminal network to potentially letting everyone involved walk free? Agent Stone pulled up a legal document on her screen. Romano's lawyer is a former federal prosecutor named Jonathan Blackwood. He knows exactly how to exploit procedural mistakes to get his clients acquitted. He's built his entire career on finding technical violations that invalidate otherwise solid cases. What are our options? Ashley asked, though she dreaded the answer. We're fighting the motion, obviously. The U.S. Attorney's Office has assigned their best appellate lawyer to argue that the evidence should be admissible despite the procedural errors. But it's going to come down to which federal judge hears the case, and Blackwood has a strong track record with these types of challenges. Agent Stone paused, looking directly at Ashley through the video call. There's something else, Ashley. If we lose this motion, there could be personal consequences for you as well. What kind of consequences? Blackwood is threatening to file a civil lawsuit against you personally, claiming that your unauthorized cooperation with law enforcement damaged his client's reputation and business interests. It's a frivolous lawsuit designed to intimidate you, but it could still cost you thousands of dollars in legal fees. Ashley felt her world crumbling. She had tried to do the right thing, to seek justice for herself and other military families, and now she was facing the possibility of personal legal action from the very criminals who had victimized her. Captain Martinez was furious. So Romano steals from military families for years, gets caught red-handed with a warehouse full of stolen goods, and his punishment might be getting everything back, plus the ability to sue his victims? This is beyond insane. Unfortunately, this is how the criminal justice system sometimes works. Criminals with expensive lawyers can exploit procedural mistakes to escape consequences, even when their guilt is obvious. That evening, Ashley called her parents to explain the situation. Her father's reaction was explosive anger, while her mother broke down in tears over the phone. "This can't be happening," her mother sobbed. "You did everything right, Ashley. You trusted the system. You worked with the FBI. You helped expose criminals who were hurting other families. How can they turn that against you?" Her father's voice was bitter. Because the system is rigged to protect people with money and connections. Romano can afford a lawyer who knows how to manipulate legal technicalities, while families like ours just have to hope justice somehow prevails. Ashley tried to comfort her parents, but she was struggling with her own despair. She had believed that doing the right thing would lead to justice, but now it seemed like her courage was being used as a weapon against her. Later that night, Ashley video called Emma, who was now finishing her senior year of high school. Emma had been Ashley's strongest supporter throughout the investigation, and her reaction to the news surprised Ashley. "You know what, Ash? Even if everything goes wrong, even if Romano and Victoria walk free,
you still did something incredible. How can you say that? I might have destroyed the case against them. No, you exposed them. Before you fought back, Romano's network was operating in secret, targeting military families with no one even knowing it was happening. Now, everyone knows. The FBI knows. Military families know to watch out for these scams. Other victims have been identified. Emma's voice grew stronger. And even if Romano gets your piano back temporarily, everyone knows it's stolen. Everyone knows he's a criminal. He can't operate the same way anymore because you shined a light on what he was doing. Ashley felt a small spark of hope for the first time in days. Emma was right. Even if the legal case failed, the exposure of the criminal network had value in itself. But as Ashley tried to sleep that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had worked for was about to crumble. The phone call that had felt like such a victory was now threatening to destroy any chance of justice for the military families who had been victimized. Tomorrow, she would learn whether her fight for justice would end in victory or devastating defeat.
The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source imaginable. Ashley was in her barracks room at 2:30 a.m. German time, unable to sleep and obsessively reading legal documents that Captain Martinez had shared with her, when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize with the Chicago area code. Sergeant Johnson, this is Professor Elena Vasquez from Northwestern University Law School. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time, but I've been following your case, and I believe I can help. Ashley sat up, instantly alert. I'm sorry, who are you? I'm a constitutional law professor who specializes in military legal issues, and I've been retained by the American Civil Liberties Union to monitor your case. What's happening to you represents a dangerous precedent that could affect military service members' rights nationwide. Ashley's heart began racing. What do you mean? Jonathan Blackwood's legal strategy is brilliant, but fundamentally flawed, and I think I know how to expose those flaws. But I need to ask you some very specific questions about the timeline of your interactions with military legal assistance. Professor Vasquez spent the next hour walking Ashley through every detail of her initial meeting with Captain Martinez, her conversations with Agent Stone, and the decision-making process that led to the recorded phone call. As they talked, Ashley began to understand that the professor was building a completely different legal argument. Sergeant Johnson, Blackwood is arguing that Captain Martinez exceeded her authority, but he's making a fundamental error about military legal assistance protocols. Under the Military Justice Act of 2016, service members have explicit rights to seek civilian legal remedy for crimes committed against them while deployed, and military legal officers are specifically authorized to facilitate those remedies. Ashley felt a surge of hope. So Captain Martinez didn't exceed her authority? Not only did she not exceed her authority, she was legally obligated to help you once you reported the theft. Blackwood is citing outdated precedents from before the 2016 reforms. The law changed specifically because of cases like yours, where service members were being victimized and then denied legal recourse due to bureaucratic technicalities. Professor Vasquez explained that she had spent the past week researching similar cases and had discovered that Blackwood had used the same flawed legal argument in 3 other cases involving military personnel. In each case, judges had initially been swayed by his arguments, but appellate courts had later overturned the decisions. The problem is that most military legal officers aren't familiar with the recent changes to civilian crime reporting protocols. Captain Martinez followed the correct procedures, but she didn't document them properly because she didn't realize she needed to cite the specific statutory authority. By morning, Professor Vasquez had assembled a legal team that included military law experts from 3 different universities and a former judge advocate general who had helped draft the 2016 Military Justice Act reforms. They were preparing to file an amicus brief supporting the government's case against Romano's motion. Ashley, your case has become a test of whether military service members have meaningful access to civilian justice when they're victimized while deployed. If Blackwood's argument succeeds, it would essentially create immunity for criminals who target military families during deployment periods. The revelation that her personal case had become a national precedent was overwhelming.
But Ashley also felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for her piano anymore. She was fighting for the rights of all military personnel to seek justice when civilians victimize them. Later that morning, Ashley received another unexpected call, this time from Agent Stone, with news that would transform the entire case. Ashley, we just got a massive break. One of Ramona's former associates has decided to cooperate with our investigation, and what he's telling us changes everything. The cooperating witness was Dr. Marcus Webb, a former Chicago art appraiser who had been recruited by Ramona 18 months earlier to authenticate stolen items. Dr. Webb had initially believed he was working for a legitimate acquisition company, but had gradually realized the operation's criminal nature.
Webb kept detailed records of every item he appraised for Romano, including documentation of their true origins, Agent Stone explained. He has photographs, appraisal reports, and even recorded conversations where Romano explicitly discussed stealing from military families. More importantly, Dr. Webb had been present during Romano's initial recruitment of Victoria and had recorded several meetings where Romano outlined his strategy for targeting deployed service members. The recordings provided independent evidence of the criminal conspiracy that didn't depend on Ashley's phone call. Webb recorded Romano saying, and I quote, "Military deployments are like Christmas morning for us. All these families with valuable stuff and no way to protect it when we create a crisis. This gives us direct evidence of criminal intent that's completely separate from your phone call." The timing of Dr. Webb's cooperation wasn't coincidental. He had been horrified to learn that Romano was now trying to use legal technicalities to escape prosecution after victimizing military families. Webb's own son was a Marine deployed in Japan, and the thought that his work had enabled crimes against military families had tormented him for months. Webb is willing to testify that Romano specifically instructed him to research the backgrounds of stolen items to ensure they belonged to deployed military personnel. Romano wanted to target military families because he knew they would have the most difficulty responding quickly to thefts. Professor Vasquez's legal team used Dr. Webb's evidence to file a supplemental brief arguing that even if Ashley's phone call was ruled inadmissible, sufficient independent evidence existed to prosecute Romano and his associates. The brief also included affidavits from other military families who had been victimized by the network, demonstrating a clear pattern of targeting deployed service members. But the most significant breakthrough came when Professor Vasquez discovered that Blackwood himself had committed a serious ethical violation. While researching his background, she found that Blackwood had previously represented one of Romano's international buyers in an unrelated case, creating a conflict of interest that he had failed to disclose to the court. Blackwood can't represent Romano because he has confidential information about Romano's business relationships from his previous client, Professor Vasquez explained to Ashley. This is a fundamental breach of legal ethics that could result in his disbarment. When Professor Vasquez filed a motion exposing Blackwood's conflict of interest, the defense strategy began to unravel. Blackwood was forced to withdraw from the case, and Romano's new attorney was a public defender who lacked the specialized knowledge to pursue the technical challenges to the evidence. Meanwhile, Victoria's defense was collapsing under the weight of Dr. Webb's testimony. Webb had recorded conversations where Victoria enthusiastically discussed her success in manipulating military families and even bragged about her psychological research on Ashley's family. In one recording, Victoria tells Romano that she spent months studying Ashley's social media posts and family photos to understand the emotional significance of the piano. She specifically says she wanted to time the theft for maximum emotional impact. The revelation that Victoria had deliberately calculated the emotional harm she was causing destroyed any sympathy she might have received from prosecutors or the court. Her attempt to portray herself as a coerced victim became laughable in the face of recorded evidence showing her enthusiasm for the criminal enterprise. As the government's case strengthened, Romano's new defense attorney began exploring plea negotiations. Dr. Webb's cooperation had revealed the locations of additional stolen items that had been sold to international buyers, expanding the case to include dozens of additional victims and millions of dollars in stolen goods. Romano is looking at potentially decades in federal prison, Agent Stone told Ashley. His new lawyer is suggesting he might be willing to provide information about other criminal networks in exchange for a reduced sentence. The possibility that Romano might cooperate to expose other criminal organizations was both exciting and terrifying. Ashley realized that her decision to fight back had not only exposed one criminal network, but might lead to the discovery of additional operations targeting military families nationwide. Professor Vasquez called Ashley with the final piece of good news. The federal judge assigned to hear Romano's motion was Judge Patricia Hernandez, a former military prosecutor who had extensive experience with cases involving crimes against service members. Judge Hernandez wrote several of the legal opinions that established service members' rights to civilian legal remedy. She's not going to be sympathetic to arguments that would deny military personnel access to justice, Professor Vasquez explained to Ashley. As Ashley prepared for what she hoped would be the final phase of her legal battle, she realized that her great-grandmother Rose had been right about music bringing justice to the world. Ashley's fight for her piano had exposed a criminal network, led to legal reforms protecting military families, and potentially opened the door to discovering additional criminal operations nationwide. The young woman who had started this journey heartbroken and betrayed was now at the center of a national legal precedent that would protect future generations of military families. Her personal tragedy had become a victory for justice that extended far beyond recovering a single family heirloom.
6 months later, Ashley stood in the witness box of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, facing the man who had orchestrated the theft of her great-grandmother's piano and countless other military family treasures. Vincent Romano looked smaller and more ordinary than she had imagined during all those sleepless nights in Germany. Without his expensive suits and criminal empire, he appeared to be exactly what he was, a middle-aged con artist who had built his wealth by exploiting the families of America's service members. Judge Patricia Hernandez had denied Romano's motion to suppress evidence in a scathing 43-page ruling that Professor Vasquez would later describe as a landmark decision for military legal rights. The judge had not only upheld Ashley's cooperation with the FBI, but had praised it as an exemplary case of a service member using proper legal channels to seek justice for crimes committed against military families. Ashley's testimony was the culmination of months of preparation with federal prosecutors. She had returned from Germany 3 weeks earlier on special assignment to testify in what had become one of the largest military family theft prosecutions in U.S. history. The case now included 37 separate victims, $4.2 million in recovered stolen goods, and evidence of criminal networks operating in 12 different states. Sergeant Johnson, Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Chen, began. Please tell the court about the first time you saw your great-grandmother's piano. Ashley looked directly at the jury as she spoke. I was 4 years old. My great-grandmother Rose was teaching me to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and I couldn't reach the pedals. She told me that someday the piano would be mine and that I would teach my own children and grandchildren to play on it, just like she was teaching me. Over the next 2 hours, Ashley walked the jury through her relationship with Rose, the significance of the piano inheritance, her deployment to Germany, and the devastating phone call from Emma that had started her journey toward justice. But this wasn't the same heartbroken young woman who had first called military legal assistance 8 months earlier. Ashley's transformation had begun during her extended preparation for trial. Working with federal prosecutors, military legal experts, and victim advocates had shown her that her personal tragedy was part of a much larger pattern of exploitation. She had learned to see her experience not just as a family betrayal, but as an example of how criminals specifically targeted the military community's values of trust, service, and sacrifice. Sergeant Johnson, Prosecutor Chen continued, how has this experience affected your view of military service? Ashley's answer surprised even herself. It's made me more committed to serving, not less. When I first enlisted, I thought military service was about protecting America from foreign threats.
Now I understand that part of protecting America means protecting military families from people who see our service as an opportunity to exploit us. During cross-examination, Romano's public defender, Janet Mills, attempted to portray Ashley as vindictive and obsessed with revenge. But Ashley's months of preparation had taught her to remain calm and focused on facts rather than emotions. Now, Sergeant Johnson, isn't it true that you could have simply worked with your insurance company to replace the piano instead of pursuing this elaborate investigation? Ashley looked directly at the lawyer. Ma'am, you can't replace a family heirloom that's been passed down for 4 generations. But more importantly, if I had just taken the insurance money, Mr. Romano would still be stealing from other military families. This was never just about getting my piano back. It was about stopping criminals from targeting people who serve our country. The power of Ashley's transformation was evident in how she had turned her personal trauma into a broader mission for justice. During the trial, she had connected with other military family victims, helping them understand the legal process and providing emotional support based on her own experience. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, who had been called to testify about military legal assistance protocols, later told the court that Ashley's case had led to significant reforms in how the military helps service members deal with civilian crimes committed against their families. Sergeant Johnson's courage in pursuing this case has resulted in new training for military legal officers, improved coordination with civilian law enforcement, and the creation of a database to track crimes specifically targeting military families during deployment periods. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez testified.
Victoria's separate trial had concluded 2 weeks earlier, with her conviction on federal charges of conspiracy, fraud, and trafficking in stolen goods. She had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $340,000 in restitution to victims. During her sentencing hearing, Victoria had attempted to apologize to Ashley's family, but her words had rung hollow after months of evidence revealing the calculated nature of her crimes. Marcus had not been charged criminally, as prosecutors determined he was genuinely unaware of Victoria's criminal activities. However, the revelation of his wife's true nature had devastated him. He had testified against Victoria, providing crucial evidence about her manipulation tactics and her discussions of the piano theft. The experience had transformed Marcus from someone who avoided difficult conversations to someone who insisted on direct communication and verification of information. The hardest part, Marcus had told Ashley during one of their reconciliation conversations, is realizing that while you were serving our country overseas, I was helping someone rob you. I'll never forgive myself for not calling you directly to confirm what Victoria was telling us. Ashley's relationship with her parents had also been transformed by the experience. They had initially felt tremendous guilt about being manipulated by Victoria, but Ashley's journey had taught them that they were victims of sophisticated psychological manipulation, not willing accomplices to theft. Your mother and I have learned to trust our instincts, Ashley's father told her during a family dinner after she returned from Germany. If something seems too urgent or too secretive to allow for proper communication, that's exactly when we need to slow down and ask more questions. The trial itself had become a showcase for the sophisticated methods criminals use to target military families. Dr. Webb's testimony revealed how Romano's network had studied military deployment patterns, researched family finances through real estate transactions and social media, and even monitored military spouse support groups to identify potential targets. Romano's organization had profiles on over 200 military families across the Midwest, Dr. Webb testified. They knew deployment schedules, family relationship dynamics, and the approximate value of inherited items. It was industrial-scale identity theft combined with psychological manipulation. The evidence presented during the trial revealed that Ashley's piano was scheduled to be shipped to a private collector in Geneva, Switzerland, who specialized in acquiring
unique provenance items, stolen goods that couldn't be traced through normal channels. The international scope of the operation meant that recovered items represented only a fraction of what Romano's network had actually stolen over the years. Agent Stone testified that the investigation had led to cooperation agreements with law enforcement agencies in 6 countries, resulting in the recovery of military family heirlooms that had been stolen as far back as 2018. The international cooperation had also led to the discovery of similar networks operating in other countries that specifically targeted American military personnel stationed overseas. Romano's sentencing hearing took place on a cold February morning in Chicago. Ashley chose to attend in person, wearing her dress uniform as she delivered a victim impact statement that would later be cited in legal textbooks as an example of how personal trauma can be transformed into advocacy for systemic change. Your Honor, Vincent Romano didn't just steal my great-grandmother's piano. He stole pieces of American military history, broke apart family legacies, and turned our service to our country into a vulnerability he could exploit for profit, Ashley told the court. But his crimes also revealed the strength and resilience of military families. Every victim in this case chose to fight back, to seek justice, and to protect other families from experiencing what we went through. Judge Hernandez sentenced Romano to 23 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay $4.2 million in restitution to victims. In her sentencing remarks, the judge noted that Romano's crimes represented a particularly despicable form of theft that specifically targeted families who sacrificed for our nation's security. But for Ashley, the most meaningful part of the sentencing wasn't Romano's punishment, it was the announcement that the case had led to the creation of the Military Family Protection Act, federal legislation that created new criminal penalties for crimes specifically targeting service members and their families during deployment periods. Sergeant Johnson's courage in fighting back against these criminals has protected countless military families who will never even know her name. Judge Hernandez said, her transformation from victim to advocate represents the best traditions of military service, protecting others, even at personal cost. As Ashley left the courthouse that day, she realized that her great-grandmother Rose had been preparing her for this moment during all those childhood piano lessons. Rose had taught her that beautiful music came from practice, patience, and the courage to keep playing even when the notes were difficult. Ashley had learned to play the most challenging piece of her life, transforming personal trauma into justice for others and turning betrayal into a force for protecting military families nationwide. Her piano would be coming home soon, but Ashley had discovered something even more valuable, the power to turn personal pain into protection for others who served alongside her.
18 months after that devastating phone call from Emma, Ashley Johnson stood in her parents' living room in Cedar Falls, Iowa, watching professional piano movers carefully position her great-grandmother's 1920s Steinway in the exact spot where it had sat for decades. The familiar weight of the instrument seemed to anchor the room in a way that made everything feel complete again, but Ashley knew that nothing would ever be quite the same as it was before. The piano itself bore no physical scars from its journey through Romano's criminal network. Professional restoration experts hired by the FBI had ensured that every key, pedal, and mother-of-pearl inlay was returned to perfect condition. But as Ashley ran her fingers across the keys for the first time in nearly 2 years, she understood that the real transformation hadn't happened to the piano. It had happened to her. "Play something, sweetheart," her mother said softly, settling into the same chair where she used to sit during Ashley's childhood lessons with Rose. Ashley chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece that Rose had taught her when she was 16 and struggling with the decision of whether to continue piano lessons or focus entirely on preparing for military service. As the gentle melody filled the room, Ashley realized that she no longer had to choose between honoring Rose's memory and serving her country. Her experience had taught her that both were part of the same larger mission. The past 18 months had transformed Ashley from a communications specialist into something she never expected to become, a national advocate for military family rights and a recognized expert on crimes targeting service members. The Military Family Protection Act that had grown out of her case was now federal law, and Ashley had been invited to testify before Congress about implementation strategies. Sergeant Johnson has become the face of military family resilience, Senator Patricia Williams had said during the congressional hearing. Her case demonstrates that when we fail to protect military families, we fail to protect the very people who protect all of us. Ashley's role as an advocate had begun organically during Romano's trial, when other military family victims had sought her guidance on navigating the legal system. What started as informal support had evolved into a formal position as military family liaison for the Department of Justice's Organized Crime Task Force, a role that allowed her to continue her military service while helping other families recover from similar crimes. Every month we get reports of new schemes targeting military families, Ashley explained during a recent briefing to base commanders across Europe. Romance scams targeting military spouses, fake emergency fundraisers exploiting deployment anxiety, identity theft operations that specifically target service members' financial accounts. Romano's network was just the beginning. The scope of criminal targeting of military families had shocked even experienced law enforcement professionals. Ashley's case had opened doors to discovering organized crime operations in 17 different states, with international connections spanning 4 continents. The database of military family crimes that had been created as a result of her advocacy now tracked over 1,500 separate criminal incidents targeting service members and their families. But Ashley's most meaningful work happened in the quiet moments, when she spoke one-on-one with military families who had been victimized by criminals. Her ability to understand both the practical challenges of pursuing justice while deployed and the emotional trauma of family betrayal made her uniquely effective at helping other families navigate similar crises. When I first talked to Ashley, I felt like I was the only person who had ever gone through something like this, said Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, whose family jewelry had been stolen by a cousin while she was deployed to Kuwait. Ashley helped me understand that this wasn't about my family being stupid or weak. It was about criminals who specifically study military families to exploit our values of trust and service. Ashley's work had also led to significant changes in military training and support services. New service members now receive briefings about common scams targeting military families, and military legal assistance offices have been equipped with specialized resources for helping service members deal with civilian crimes committed against their families during deployments. The personal relationships within Ashley's family had also found their new reality. Marcus had divorced Victoria shortly after her conviction and had spent months in counseling to understand how he had been manipulated. His relationship with Ashley had been rebuilt on a foundation of absolute honesty and direct communication. I learned that trying to protect people from difficult conversations actually makes them more vulnerable to manipulation, Marcus told Ashley during one of their weekly video calls. Now, when something important comes up involving family, I call everyone directly, every time. Marcus had also become an unexpected advocate for military families in his own right. His experience being manipulated into facilitating theft had given him insights into how criminals exploit family dynamics. And now he spoke at military family workshops about recognizing manipulation tactics. Ashley's parents had transformed their guilt about being deceived by Victoria into determination to help other military families avoid similar experiences. They had become volunteer coordinators for the Cedar Falls Military Family Support Network, helping connect deployed service members with trusted local resources and providing emotional support for families dealing with deployment-related stress.
We can't change what happened to our family, Ashley's father explained during a military family workshop, but we can make sure other families know the warning signs of people who try to exploit deployment anxiety for criminal purposes.
Emma, now a freshman at the University of Iowa studying social work, had been profoundly affected by watching her sister transform personal trauma into advocacy for others. She was planning to specialize in military family services and had already begun volunteering with organizations that supported children of deployed service members. Ashley showed me that you can take the worst thing that happens to you and turn it into something that protects other people, Emma said during a recent family gathering. That's what I want to do with my life, too. The broader impact of Ashley's case extended far beyond her immediate family and military community. The legal precedents established during Romano's prosecution had been cited in dozens of subsequent cases involving crimes against service members. Professor Elena Vasquez had established the Military Legal Rights Research Center at Northwestern University, using Ashley's case as the foundation for studying how criminals exploit the unique vulnerabilities of military families. Ashley's case revealed that military families face a specific category of criminal targeting that civilian families rarely experience, Professor Vasquez explained during a recent academic conference. Deployment schedules, geographic separation, and the military community's culture of trust create opportunities that criminals have learned to exploit systematically. The international cooperation that had grown out of Ashley's case had also led to recovery of military family heirlooms that had been stolen years earlier. Just last month, a Civil War sword that had belonged to an Army Ranger's great-great-grandfather was recovered from a private collector in London and returned to the family. The sword had been stolen while the Ranger was deployed to Afghanistan in 2019, sold through a network connected to Romano's operation. Ashley's military career had also evolved in unexpected directions. Her expertise in military family crimes had led to her being selected for advanced training in criminal investigation, and she was now working toward becoming a military police investigator, specializing in crimes targeting service members and their families. Sergeant Johnson represents the best of what military service can become, said Colonel David Thompson, Ashley's commanding officer. She's taken a personal trauma and transformed it into professional expertise that serves both her fellow service members and the broader mission of protecting American military families. The piano that had started this entire journey now served a new purpose in the Johnson family home. Ashley had begun teaching piano lessons to children of deployed service members, using music as a way to help military families stay connected across geographic distances. The lessons were conducted via video call, allowing Ashley to maintain relationships with military children even when she was stationed overseas. Music has always been about bringing people together, Ashley explained to her newest student, 6-year-old Tyler, whose father was deployed to South Korea. When you play this piano, you're connecting to all the people who played it before you and all the people who will play it after you. But perhaps the most significant change in Ashley's life was her evolving understanding of what her great-grandmother Rose had meant when she said that music could bring justice and healing to the world. Ashley now understood that Rose hadn't been talking about literally playing piano to solve problems. She had been talking about the discipline, patience, and courage required to create something beautiful from something difficult. Rose was teaching me that beautiful things come from practice, from not giving up when the notes are hard, and from believing that your effort can create something good in the world. Ashley reflected during a recent interview. She was talking about music, but she was actually teaching me how to live. As Ashley looked toward the future, she saw possibilities that would have been unimaginable 18 months ago. Her experience had opened doors to graduate school programs in criminal justice, opportunities to work with international law enforcement agencies, and invitations to consult on military family protection policies at the highest levels of government. But on quiet Sunday afternoons in Cedar Falls, when Ashley sat at Rose's piano and played the simple melodies her great-grandmother had taught her as a child, she understood that the most important transformation was the simplest one. She had learned to turn pain into purpose, betrayal into protection for others, and personal trauma into a force for justice that extended far beyond her own experience.
The scared, heartbroken young woman who had received that devastating phone call in Germany was gone forever. In her place was a confident advocate, a skilled investigator, and a voice for military families who had learned that fighting for justice wasn't just about recovering what was stolen. It was about ensuring that others never had to experience the same loss. As Ashley played the final notes of Clair de Lune, she realized that her great-grandmother's legacy was secure. The piano would be passed down to future generations, but more importantly, the values it represented, resilience, justice, and the courage to protect others, would continue through Ashley's work and through every military family her advocacy would help protect. Rose's piano had come home, but Ashley had discovered that home was wherever she chose to use her voice to protect military families from those who would exploit their service and sacrifice, and that work would continue as long as there were people willing to serve their country and criminals willing to exploit that service for profit.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.